Hey guys, Mrhappy here, and today I'm bringing you guys a very special treat. With me here I have several members from Blue Gartr, the first free company in the world to be Turn 5 of the Binding Coil of Bahamut. We're going to talk about several things regarding progression in this raid tier, including the hard mode primals, the earlier turns 1 through 4, and then the big baddie itself, Turn 5. But first joining me are the following officers from Blue Gartr. We have Richard.
How you doing?
22.
Hey guys, what's up?
Peng.
Hi there.
And Caraway.
Hey, how's it going?
So how you guys doing today? It's Monday. Everything just reset right after you beat it. How you guys doing today?
Feels good.
Doing pretty well.
Still feeling on the high.
It feels good to not have to know you're going to be in there for 6 to 8 hours a day for the rest of the week, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, first let me just say thank you guys for taking your time to talk to me in the community. We really appreciated getting some insight on what you guys thought about the first official A Realm Reborn raid tier. Well, let's just get right down to it. So what better way to just say it? Holy crap, it's dead. It's been, what, 2 months now? It's just finally dead. I mean, this thing has been criticized, beaten, and battered into being called nearly impossible. So just how does it feel to be world first in something that in such a short time became so notorious for its difficulty and unforgivingness?
This is pretty much unmatched. I've said this before, but nothing has come close to the way that this fight kind of played out. Like if you go back, you think about WoW, Vanilla WoW, TBC, think about like Untuned Cthulhu, for example, if you can use that reference point, where it was just flat out impossible. But the entire time, 2 months straight, we always thought that this fight was possible. We always thought it was within reach. So we just kept on trying.
Well, that's great because I know a lot of people definitely gave up at some point when it came to this fight. Just when we're gonna get into that later. We're gonna talk about the emotions that have been going through the community and get your guys' perspective on it. But as much as I'd love to only talk about Turn 5, I think it's fair that we should talk about the rest of the rating tier as well. I mean, before we go any specifics, what do you guys think about the entire rating tier? Not just looking at Turn 5. What did you guys think of it? Too easy? Too hard? Perfectly tuned?
I think we had pretty high expectations going into 2.0. Turns 1 through 4, excluding turn 3, of course. They're well designed. They could be harder. We found them enjoyable. But again, it's just it's progression.
All right. Well, that sounds like a good enough answer for me. I mean, I don't know. I felt like it feels weird going back after spending all those hours on those turns and clearing them so quickly after the amount of time that went in. It seemed almost too easy to go back to these things and replicate them. Did you guys feel that too, maybe in the following weeks after you'd beaten turns 1, 2, and 4, that maybe you were afraid that once you beat turn 5, the rest of your week might be a little bit open for other things? Too open, I should say.
It definitely does feel a little too easy now that everyone has the gear. When we went through day 1, day 2, day 3, and we're wiping on turn 1, wiping on turn 2, we do feel that the fights were tuned really well if you had full eye level 70 or worse gear. Once everyone started getting the gear, yeah, it's trivial. It's easy. We've seen all this before, but we were pleasantly surprised by the mechanics, not because they're fresh and we've never seen this before. It wasn't necessarily about that, but it was seeing what they did with the reboot of a game that kind of made us go, yeah, you know what? They tried. They did a decent job. Obviously, it could be a lot better, but we're looking forward to new content.
Well, I just really wanted to ask that because this is, I guess, the first real rating tier Final Fantasy XIV's ever seen. I mean, back at 1.0, it was just usually maybe 1 or 2 new fights every couple of months. Would you say that 1.0 even had rating tiers?
Not really.
I wouldn't necessarily call 1.0 rating more than just single encounters. I mean, there wasn't really long nights after you would kill something here and there. It was just, you'd go in and just do it over and over and over. You weren't really progressing through a raid properly, so it's just a little bit different.
All right, well, I mean, so let's look at what was actually in this entire rating tier. So simply put, it was the 3 hard mode primals and coils 1, 2, 4, and 5. as the joke's already started, we're not counting turn 3 in this rating tier at all. And while doing that, you also have AK, CM, Praetorium, and Wanderer's Palace, though while the popularity has sort of, changed over the course of months, it's not really rating as much as it was preparing for rating. So did this really seem like enough content for you guys going into 2.0? Was it about what you were expecting, more or less?
I think, honestly, it meets our expectations. Go ahead.
I mean, we expected a little bit more, as everyone did, with, Crystal Tower supposed to be in the game, so we had high hopes, but devs never really deliver what they say in patches, whether it's WoW or any game. It's always falls a little bit short just because of time constraints and whatnot.
Were you upset to not see some of the 1.0 content make it through, at least in its original form? I know a lot of people were expecting Orm Vale and Zamiel Darkhold to sort of make returns with the new mechanics and everything, and, well, I don't want to say this, but Hamlets, almost. You think there should have been more content from 1.0 to come over in the 2.0 patch?
Definitely not Hamlets.
No, thank you. No, not at all.
But we had hope for hard modes. I remember there were some images that came out like early on development where we thought there would be more interesting mechanics surrounding repeating content. And right now, everyone's doing their sub 10 Wanderer's Palace runs, and they're that's what we do like all week. We craft all week, we fish all week, or whatever. So definitely there is a lack of content. We don't think it's a crippling lack of content, but we definitely need more. We're hungry for more, way more.
Well, if you were crafting all week, sounds like Hamlet's is right up your alley then. Sounds like they should have just brought that over. No, I believe me, I don't wish it was back either. But what about the Relic Quest itself? Obviously, you guys completed it back in 1.0 with Ifrit Extreme and everyone. So were you upset to see it sort of toned down from 1.0? Do you even feel that it was toned down from 1.0, or do you really just think Hamlets were the big thing that made them so hard in 1.0?
Peng, how many melds did you break trying that Relic Quest in 1.0?
Couple of hundred, probably.
Yeah, we don't miss that.
Yeah, I guess not. I guess the easy double melds now is a lot more convenient. Usually when I speak to people who have played like 11, and I followed you guys in 11 for my entire play period, usually I'm used to hearing that sort of, oh my god, it's made so easier, but it's good to see that you have that sort of attitude going into it, because I know a lot of people were like, why did I even get my relics in 1.0? And it was so you could do things like this, get world firsts. So you guys have been preparing for this well before 2.0 even came out. But when it comes to the Relic Quest, do you think they could implement a harder version of the quest in the future, perhaps at the end of 2.0, sort of? It's kind of like the original one, just a lot harder, more unique effects, more unique looks, so it's less common amongst everybody?
I think them adding tons of new things would benefit everybody. I mean, yeah, that would be something great to have in there. If it benefited the people who were willing to undertake it, I think it would be a great addition.
Compared to Final Fantasy XI, I think calling these weapons relics is just improper. I think they're more of AF weapons. I see a lot of room for improvement for new weapons and proper relic status weapons. These are just kind of, everybody needs them. Everybody should have them. It's no different really than the AF quests, in my opinion.
Well, perhaps we'll get legendary weapons at some point. I know they were working on a system for redesigning your weapons called the legendary system, but we'll see if they come up with any more unique names that more properly reflect the difficulty for obtaining them. And while we're on the topic of the Relic Quest, we might as well go right into the hard mode primals, because I know that a lot of people coming over from 1.0 were excited to see the new implementation of the hard mode primals. And what did you guys think of them? Did you like their 2.0 implementations?
I think Ifrit and Garuda made a pretty elegant transition. They're still as easy as ever. Titan is pretty cool. It is a great set of checks to see if you meet the minimum level of competency to progress to the next tier, to progress to Binding Coil, etc. So the fact that it's placed where it is in the progression is great. You see people complaining about its difficulty, you see people saying it's really easy. And so it does set people apart. It kind of divides the player base, and I think it does so in a healthy way.
Well, keeping in mind that extreme mode primals are coming next patch, do you feel that the current hard mode primals, you seem to be convinced that they're tuned correctly. Do you think they're tuned correctly, or do you think that do they not really live up to the hard mode name? More or less, just they have more mechanics than they did in their easy mode. Do you really think they're worthy of that hard mode name?
I don't think it, like, when it comes to calling it a hard mode, I mean, they could have gone with Ifrit Story and then Ifrit Normal and then Ifrit Hard. Like, it comes down to semantics, and honestly, with the eye level that they expect and the eye level that you get from those fights, I think it's fine. As long as we get extremes, like if we have to fight extremes to get our, our relics +2, for example, that would be pretty cool.
I'm kind of curious where Good King Moggle Mog fits into all this, because he's going to be in the next patch too, and being he's not part of the Relic Quest or anything, maybe just more side grades, maybe just the Moogle weapons to make the funny noises. What do you think?
Another way to get mythology, another run to sell.
Another run to sell.
Pretty much.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, selling Moogle weapons. All right, so Extreme Mode Ifrit is the only fight we really have expectations for so far. I mean, we expect 3 nail phases again, maybe some new plume mechanics, new jump patterns, and I think we can all agree that if he's extreme, most importantly, unstunnable eruptions will probably be the biggest
Would be
cripple.
nice.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, hard mode Ifrit was even easier than 1.0, miles easier because you could stun those. So with that in mind, with him being the only fight that we actually have any expectations for, just for a little bit of fun, I want to hear this from each of you. What mechanic would you like to see added in the Extreme Mode Primals? Just each of you pick one Primal and something you'd like to see in that fight, just to make it more complete for you.
Twisters in all of them.
Oh. Yeah, maybe in Garuda. I think it would make the most sense in Garuda.
Red Twisters.
Red
They're
Twisters for
twisters.
Ifrit. Earth Twisters for Titan and everything.
I would personally like to see a knockback to go with Mountain Buster in Titan that can just knock you right off if you're not placed correctly. Something like that, just to make it even more punishing.
All right. Anybody else? And Twister's not an answer. Don't say Twisters again.
I don't know. They could improve upon Soprano Sharada in Garuda a little bit. I think the way it's done right now, they're pretty much just there and you kill them almost instantly. If they expanded on those two a little bit, I think the Garuda fight could be a little bit more challenging.
All right. Any last thoughts? Again, no Twisters. Something real that you'd like to hear.
I think essentially the core problem with those fights is that they're too tightly scripted. It's too predictable. There needs to be a little bit of randomization. Not necessarily, RNG is a bad word for a lot of people, and for us too. We never like to blame anything on RNG. We never like to be able to attribute anything to RNG. But the fact that you never have to react, that you can actually just memorize the fights start to finish is a little... it trivializes it a little bit. So,
yeah, I agree. I think the only real pieces of RNG was who got eruptions, who got friction, and who got jailed. I think we're really the only big RNG parts of that fight, and those aren't, those are barely reaction based. You can't really do much about them. So with hard mode, let's get off the hard mode primals now, because there's not much more to really say about those. And let's talk about the first 4. I guess you can say there were 4 turns of Coil before 5. Again, 3 doesn't really count as far as I'm concerned. And so first we'll talk about Coil 1, because you guys were the first people in there, right after Titan, right into Coil 1. I heard you guys took, 7 hours maybe to beat Coil 1? I remember hearing something along those lines.
we
Probably.
finished... Go ahead.
Yeah, I think about 3 of those hours was probably spent trying to figure out what the hell was going on with the Paralyzed.
Oh yeah, ADS, the gatekeeper for Coil, I like to call him. So when you first entered and saw the Allegan defense system, after you beat him, if it took you 3 hours with the Paralyzed, I can only imagine the disappointment at no loot when you actually beat him.
Wait, that's what it stands for?
Allegan defense system? Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, Caraway.
Nah, I mean,
I am
it's not
so bad at this game.
ADS. That's what it says. Who needs to know what it actually means, right? The
Right,
only reason I know is I think it's because it's on the items, the platings, and the framing. I think it also says Allegan
Right.
defense system on it. So yeah, but are you disappointed at no loot for the very first boss that you encountered in Coil 1?
We were mildly perturbed. I'll put it that way.
Were you just as mildly perturbed when you opened that chest every week and just got potions?
Yeah, I mean, so after we killed it and we saw no loot, we're like, okay, so this is a mini boss. So what's gonna happen with the actual bosses? And given the level of gear that we had going in, it was challenging to learn the fight from scratch and to be faced with mechanics that we didn't expect necessarily. So we were pleasantly surprised. I mean, you go in now and it's trivial, like it's super easy. You can face roll through it. But at the time, coming off Titan and going into ADS and then running through the trash and just we went in wanting to be pleasantly surprised. And so maybe that set us up to be pleasantly surprised.
It could also set you up to be, unfortunately, disappointed as well, but it doesn't sound like you were at all, which is good. I guess the no loot and the potions from the chest, though, is a start to that. So, Caduceus. Caduceus was the real, I guess, first boss of Coil. ADS, we won't really count if he's just a mini-boss. So, this fight, pretty simple on the outside. Were you guys impressed when you first encountered it?
The first time it splits, we were pretty impressed. Dealing with the slime patterns, we went in there and we broke it down. We took screenshots of everything. We figured out the grid. We figured out all the different possible configurations, and we came up with all sorts of plans in terms of how to deal with the mechanics. And now we just burn through it, and I think a lot of groups do. So complexity is definitely reduced a lot by this point in time. But again, those that first week, those first 2 weeks, it was definitely cool to see them thinking outside the 1.0 box, if that makes any sense. That they were actually taking cues from established games, that they were looking to the history of the genre and trying to learn from it was for us a good thing. Obviously, they have a lot of room for improvement, so we hope that they continue to learn and that they make shit way harder.
Well, so this had more of the RNG that we were talking about. Sort of, you mentioned the patterns on the floor, and that's pretty much the biggest RNG of this fight, is dealing with the fact that there can be the two platforms up top. You can deal with platforms that are under the tanks and everything. So when the platforms first started lighting up, you clearly knew something was going to happen with those platforms. Would you say that was really the niche of the fight, was the lit up platforms, or would you say that the split and the slimes and the feeding of the slimes are actually the niche of it? Because it all comes together into one big piece, but there's always one mechanic that sort of stands out over the rest of them. Which one was it for you, at least on this fight?
I think the slime mechanic has the most nuance to it, how it interacts with the stacks, the ever-increasing stacks, and the timing of that. And if there were a way to force groups to always have to deal with that mechanic and interact with that mechanic, then the fight wouldn't be called as easy as it is. It might still be easy, but that's definitely the thing that sets it apart, because dealing with two different bosses that have split health and just trying to tank through or DPS through or heal through more damage, pretty simple concepts. And even the slime thing is not like out of this world, but it's definitely the more interesting part of the fight.
Yeah, I feel like the slime part of the fight was well designed, but the problem was that the way it was designed, it was just easier to burn it. So we ended up burning it pretty early on, instead of just actually doing the fight the way it was intended.
Yeah, I know that when we first cleared it as well, and we were doing it, we actually just said, what if we just didn't deal with the slimes? That was the first thought. It's like, what if we just forewent that whole idea? And unfortunately, in my opinion, it ended up working. But there's not really much more we could say about turn one. ADS disappointment. First chest was a disappointment, but at least Caduceus brought some smiles. So turn two. Now, turn two is a major change of pace from turn one. I don't think we've seen anything like this in a Final Fantasy game before. The sort of gauntlet of bosses that sort of changed the final boss around. Did you guys think it was a good change of pace from turn one, this fast-paced DPS, healing, and tanking check, everything together?
I thought it was really cool.
It was cool. I feel like it was harder for us because we had 4 monks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess there's a lot of different strategies out there now to deal with having melee in the group, but I can imagine that, the biggest challenge of going for world first is that you're usually under geared when you're going for world first. That's usually the biggest challenge. So being under geared and having 4 melee in a fight that you've seen before anybody else, and you have to figure it out first. I can only imagine that you guys had hell on earth with that fight. Although I can imagine never was there a high voltage that didn't get silenced at the same time.
Well, we had our learning curve with every part of that encounter. The worst part about it for us was that our first group got stuck, dead, in turn 2 for 8 or 9 hours, I believe. Our second group got stuck in turn 2, same bug, dead on the floor, couldn't do anything for 32 hours.
Was that the only bug you'd had up until this point in Coil? Because I knew you guys got that bug in turn 2, but did you guys have anything that maybe other groups never saw in Coil 1 and in other parts of Coil 2?
I think that's the only bug that really stands out. Everything else, I think everyone else has reported or talked about.
So, I mean, there's a lot going on. If you look at the fight as a whole, there's a lot going on, but it all doesn't really culminate because you're dealing with the mechanics one by one, sort of. So, with Allagan Rot, what was your first thought when Allagan Rot hit a target? What was the first thought that went through your head?
Read the tooltip.
Read the tooltip. There you go. See, that's a good tip. Anyone out there, if you're learning a fight for the first time and you don't know what's going on, as soon as you get a debuff you don't recognize, read the tooltip. It's a great tip right there. So, any chance of you guys, now that you've beaten everything just for fun, taking on a Rotless ADS with the haste buff just for fun?
We want to try it, definitely.
Do you guys think it's possible to kill all 6 nodes in full item level 90 gear and kill the ADS? I mean, you'd have to double back, and it would cost a lot of time with all those debuffs. Do you think it's possible at this gear level?
It might be. It's hard to say.
We were already killing 4 when we first got the kill. Because we were going full melee, we had to kill 4 to get rid of enough of the mechanics to actually make it safe for melee. So 6 might be possible.
Yeah, the only thing I'm really concerned about is the travel time from the one side back down to the other side. And, of course, Allagan Rot giving him that haste buff is just never going to be fun for anybody. Well, with that out of the way, speaking of which, now we've gotten to turn 2. Have you guys gotten at least 2 of the 3 parts for the housing? Because I got to know, the plating and the frame, you guys have to have gotten those by now, right?
We have 2 out of 3, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm assuming the Illuminant is the dreaded turn 5 drop, because it's definitely not a turn 4 drop.
I believe according to the Eorzea DB, the official DB, it is from turn 5.
Oh, that's... well, very few people are going to have that housing ornament for a while, it seems then. So, turn 3. You guys were trolling all over the forums with this.
Green Hill Zone.
That. Yeah, it's Green Hill Zone. I remember both you and whichever group immediately followed you were saying, oh, turn 3 is ridiculously hard. I don't know how we beat it. And everyone thought you were so serious until every group started getting to turn 3. Can we just agree overall that it was pretty pointless, wasn't it? I don't understand. It didn't expand the story at all. It didn't have any loot. It wasn't interesting. You're playing hopscotch the whole time, going up and down the thing. You guys just agree that turn 3 was a disappointment overall?
It was fun. Like, when we first got there, it was actually pretty fun. But I think everyone was confused as to what that turn actually is.
Yeah, I think, once you first see it and think, wow, SE actually designed this as part of endgame content, it was like LOL, and you have a good time with it on Vent. But now, it's literally just a nuisance that you have to go through to get to turn 4, and it just sucks every week.
Yeah, and it was especially worse when people, because you know how Final Fantasy, the crowd is, the seasoned veteran crowd. Oh, there's secrets here, there are things that we haven't figured out. And it was just such a huge damper on everybody's fun when they came out and said, nothing's going on here, guys. There's literally nothing secret about this place at all. Did you guys ever think there was like a secret mechanic going on in turn 3 that would maybe affect the later turns, or even at least give you a reason to do it?
We thought there might be loot that was hidden that required some kind of trigger condition. We did map out every floor of that place, much to our chagrin, after the fact.
Yeah, it's just, I can't help but just want to get off the topic. So let's please get off the topic of turn 3. Alright, then turn 4 it is, because turn 4, Turn 4 was sort of a different pace from all the other fights, because it wasn't really one of those fights where you have a boss. It was just the boss was a bunch of ads. Are you guys a fan of those types of fights whenever they're in MMOs?
It was a nice change, I think, to have a really simple fight where you just have to execute and you have to put out enough DPS, you have to heal, and you have to manage your tanking cooldowns or whatever. So again, for the level of gear that we had, it was nice to have a change of pace.
We like DPS fights, so
yeah, we do.
With 4 monks, I can imagine you would love DPS fights. Although you guys didn't bring 4 monks into there, did you?
no, we had to gear up other characters because we hadn't actually geared anyone else up at that point. So we didn't actually have any range, so...
Well, I mean, this, other than turn 5, this turn did take you guys the longest, didn't it? So it must have been a major pain with the setup to have to go out and gear everything else just to get to this turn and beat it, right?
Yeah, we took a lot of time off to have someone level Scholar. We did try Summoner briefly. We felt more comfortable with the strat that we ended up using, but we definitely had to explore Summoner's capabilities. So we definitely felt like we spent a lot of time not actually putting in attempts, but doing other things to prepare for the fight. When we got back in there after taking, I think, a 4-day break, we went back in there and we killed it pretty quickly. So
Turn 2 definitely took us longer. Turn 4, we figured out pretty fast. We just didn't have the setup to actually kill the bot.
Well, did turn 2 take you longer in actuality, or take you longer because you got stuck in there from a bug for however long?
in actual attempts, it took us longer.
Okay. That's good then. That's kind of weird. I feel like a lot of people had a bigger problem with turn 4, but it's good to hear that it was really just a matter of your setup and not so much the execution. You guys knew what you wanted to do, but it was just the setup you had. Well, after turn 4 it's the big one. It's the one that, got us all here talking in the first place. It's turn 5, Twin Tanya. I mean, that's right. Don't forget, the whole point of this thing was that you guys did world first this, and it was a legit world first. There weren't, elevation bugs or anything along those lines. And I mean, at this point, turns 1 through 4, you get to turn 5. In your head, did you go less than 100 people? Are you kidding me? Or were you just expecting something so extreme that it would really block a lot of people from actually making that under 100 prediction that Yoshi P made?
After going through turns 1 through 4, we weren't really sure about what to expect anymore. We went into Coil from day 1, not really knowing what to expect, and then we kind of got used to the progression from 1, 2, and 4. And then 5, we just had no idea.
Yeah, I was on Twitch watching Peng's stream right as soon as they had cleared turn 4, and they're like, "Okay, let's give turn 5 a look." And they walked in and they, saw Twin Tawny, and they were like, "Oh wow, this is okay. Let's go in there and see what happened." And the lulls were had as soon as they zoned into that fight, and it was amazing.
I can only imagine the first time you guys hit the edge of the arena, because I know there were always lulls when it came to that thing. But you can't tell me that, and this is just a for fun question, but you guys can't tell me that song from in there doesn't sound like it comes right out of a Christopher Nolan Batman film. Can you? Can you seriously tell me that it doesn't sound exactly like the Batman theme?
I don't think I have music on.
You gotta turn the music on, because it sounds, trust me, now you're gonna go listen to it tonight, and you're going to hear it, and you're like, oh my god, now I can't listen to the song anymore. Alright, so before we touch on any of the sort of specifics, we're not going to go too specific into this one, let's get some general thoughts about the fight. So who wants to start? Just general thoughts about the fight.
It sucks.
Anything a little bit more specific than that.
I'll elaborate on behalf of Peng. A lot of the mechanics in that fight interlock in a really weird way. Timing is really important for us. So at some points in time during the fight, we are kind of annoyed by how it works, if that makes any sense.
No, I've been in there enough times to completely understand what that means, trust me. I mean, don't get me wrong, this fight was pretty buggy from the get-go, too, so I can only imagine that added to your frustration. I mean, just to rattle off a few. Red marks, being off time by 2 seconds, immobilization due to disconnects, elevation abuse, stunning the little snakes, both before and after the recent bugs, because there's a different bug with that now. Main tank disconnecting, causing immobilization. Hell, the thing got taken down for 2 weeks, and they barely even fixed the immobilization bug both times it came back up. I mean, even a new bug, as I was just saying, involving the little snakes. It just went from one bug to another. You guys must have encountered pretty much all of these at some point. Hell, I know I have.
We never encountered the tank disconnect bug. When people started talking about the exploit, we had no idea what they were talking about, and we never tried it. As far as like other bugs, like markers appearing late or sounds not firing properly due to too many things happening, like when the disseminate happens during a certain part in time during the fight, and it's possible to obscure other things happening in that part of the fight also. That's pretty frustrating to deal with. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, and then the actual mechanics themselves, we still don't know how much of it is intended and how much of it is unintended, because Square Enix is pretty hush-hush about what they actually want to happen in their fights.
Well, as long as we don't need another video showing people chat logs about how to do it, then I think we'll be okay on this one. But do you think they need a better QA process when it comes to this big fight? I mean, I know it's hard to have a proper QA without thousands of people playing it and all, but it seems like even after they knew what was wrong, they just couldn't fix it. Do you think they just need a better process for tuning these fights?
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Well,
the game needs a test round badly.
Yeah, well,
very badly.
Hopefully they can fix the whole 30 buff debuff problem by the time 24-mans come around, because I still haven't found an Odin or a Behemoth to even test it on, so just can't even see them half the time. Well, bugs aside, let's talk about the fight itself. Now you guys had some interesting methods for dealing with certain mechanics in the video release. Personally, I'm just glad to see you guys weren't sleeping conflagrations, because once that became a thing, I lost hope that people just started changing their strategies just to sleep the conflagration. Do you think that even makes the fight easier in the long run to sleep the conflagrations?
We're not really sure.
Well, you still need to have enough DPS to kill the conflags to be able to do the rest of the fight. Like the later part of the fight, you actually need a certain amount of damage to be able to actually meet the DPS checks. So if you can't even kill the conflags, you're probably going to have a very, very hard time later on anyway.
You think this just came with a lot of the rumors going around that Wax and Flesh had some hidden mechanic to it? Because I know a lot of people were looking towards that in some of the random posts going around the forums.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of theories thrown around. But as far as sleeping conflags go, we haven't tried it, so we're not sure how it affects the rest of the fight.
Well, the only thing I was concerned about is potentially the limit break gauge, because it's, as far as I can tell from when I've seen it streamed, it's significantly lower without the conflagrations. Actually, you taking the time to gain the crits and the limit break over the course of DPSing the conflag. And would you say that having a tier 3 limit break is not necessarily essential for the snakes in your gear, but pretty damn helpful at the very least?
Very helpful, yeah.
Alright, well, unfortunately I don't think the world wants to hear that much about phases 1 through 3, since groups have been streaming it into the ground. I mean, conflagrations, red marks, dive bombs, snakes, liquid hells. I mean, I guess it's mostly relevant, especially, the latter, but people have seen it so much at this point that I don't think it's really the mechanic anyone is interested in talking about. Now, I know the big thing everybody wants to hear about are twisters, and I know you guys won't come right out and say it here, so I won't ask the million-dollar question, how do they work? Instead of that, I'll ask you some other questions. First is, how long did it take to figure out?
Not as long as you'd think at all. We figured it out pretty early on, because Hang's kind of like the James Bond of figuring things out. He just does it somehow.
Does he have a suit that he does it in?
I don't know. We're
wish we
convinced
do.
that he's a midget in real life, since he won't post the picture, so it might be a baby suit.
I mean, on top of that, if it didn't take you that long, then did you guys think it was at least well-tuned? I mean, I remember in your post you said it was very, 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 very unforgiving, but do you think that it was at least tuned well towards what's actually available in the game and how these systems, the underlying systems, work?
Well, the twister mechanic itself is not tuned. there's nothing to tune. It's a one-shot kill mechanic, which is frustrating to deal with. We don't think that it's random beyond the fact that it targets 4 random people in the party, but it's just dodging in a very specific way. And in fact, the members of our kill group, I think there are 3 or 4 different dodge methods that we use. So that part itself, the twister mechanic itself, we don't think it's an interestingly tuned mechanic. We just think it's extremely unforgiving. It's beyond anything we've seen before in other games. The rest of that phase is pretty interestingly tuned. The Dread Knight interaction, without going too much into it, and kind of, it's a limbo game to see how low can you go through however many sequences of twisters.
Yeah, so there was never a point where you just thought twisters are RNG. There's no pattern. Sometimes you die, sometimes you don't. Or were you always confident it was working as intended? I mean, I know you guys said in your victory post, but I mean, be honest with me. When you first encountered it, what were your real thoughts about the mechanic?
We never ever thought it was RNG.
Because it didn't take us that long to figure it out, so we didn't. It wasn't like, okay, what the hell, what's going on? We figured it out eventually, like you would figure out anything else. And so maybe if it would have taken us longer, we would have defaulted to RNG, but it wasn't long enough to get there yet, if that makes any sense.
So then, because even in your kill video, there's deaths from twisters. So would you say the phase is more about coming back from those deaths that maybe just didn't go the way that you planned, and not so much about, obviously you don't want 4 people getting popped up by them, but you need to be, this is really the phase where it comes down to reacting with raising people and getting through the phase with all 8 people alive. Is that really the harder part about the phase instead of the Dread Knight and the insta-kills?
The Dread Knights aren't to be underestimated at all, in my opinion. But as far as twisters go, yeah, you need things to line up properly. You need everyone to be executing so well for such a tense period of time, which goes longer and longer the worse your DPS is, or if people make mistakes, it extends that phase. So that creates more opportunities for people to make mistakes. And that's really what it comes down to, is everyone lining up and not making even the tiniest, slightest mistake. And everyone has to do that at the same time. So that's where the difficulty lies.
I mean, when I was watching it, all I can say is I felt bad for the scholar in that video. It seemed like he was just getting bullied the entire fight.
The entire Final Fantasy XIV community has started a community donation to Verily and his medical repair bills.
Yeah, well, at least the game brought it down a little bit, so he doesn't need that much. I mean, the point-blank unwoven will on the monk, though, was probably the part that had me most on edge. I was like, there is no room for error here, and all I was thinking the whole time was, well, Bard's OP. The whole time I was thinking. Would you guys say, by the way, off topic, that Bard's in a really overpowered place right now and it needs sort of the fixes that are coming in the next patch, based on your raid composition choice for this win?
Bards definitely have huge advantages, but we absolutely do not think they need nerfs, because if you look at their real DPS ceiling of a Bard, it doesn't come anywhere close to a equivalently geared Black Mage or Monk, for example. So we think that melee needs help. But as far as Bards needing a nerf, no, I don't think so. I think that's the wrong way to go, too.
Well, this is something that I just got to ask. And I know you guys in the post said you spent, quote-unquote, uncountable hours on the fight. Can we get a real estimate, though?
4 to 6 hours a night for about between 4 to 7 nights a week since our turn 4 kill.
And how many groups in there doing it?
2 groups. One group ran a little less than our main group, but we all contributed to discussion and strats and theory crafting together.
All right, that sounds good to me. That sounds like less time than a lot of people actually are putting into it, trying to go for the world first. So that's really impressive that that's all it really took for you guys. Well, how many of them went to... Now, you said it was not as much. Would you say Twisters actually took you less than maybe all the other phases, Phase 5, 3, and 2? Because Phase 1 is, I'm not even going to ask about that. I can imagine you guys figured out Phase 1 pretty quickly. But would you say that it didn't take as much time as the other phases?
Twisters are definitely the stumbling block. The part that takes the longest time, not to learn, but to get through consistently.
Well, the bottom line is twisters are dodgeable, but just as you said, that doesn't mean the fight is over. So in the video, it seems Phase 5 is pretty much all about control while maximizing damage. I don't want to go over what's happening in the phase too deeply because you guys have, it's still just a kill video and that's all it is. But it's easy enough to mention the liquid hells. I mean, it's anyone who's done Phase 1 recognizes those going into Phase 5. I can imagine the only reaction to seeing those things return. I mean, did you think that what did you think about this final phase of the final fight of the relaunch of the game? Did it warrant the massive buildup that had been leading to it?
I think at first we were actually kind of happy because we thought it was going to be really easy. Like the first time we saw the phase, we were like, "Oh wow, this is actually easy. Let's just kill it now." And then we kind of realized that the last phase is a lot harder than we first imagined. And you don't really notice that from the video because it doesn't really show what's going on. But the last phase is actually a lot harder than it looks.
I don't know about you guys, but having seen somebody else do the whole fight all the way through after doing it myself so many times, I'm almost hoping for a rematch against Twintanya, a hard mode almost, and that's probably just the masochist in me playing Final Fantasy XI for almost half my life. But I mean, don't you guys feel that some of this fight could have been made a bit more epic than it is? We talked about difficulty before, and don't get me wrong, it's got very little room for error. But after Twister, it just almost feels like a race against the clock. What do you guys think about that?
I think that the adrenaline rush of going through that last phase and making sure you keep things under control, I think that it's a fitting end to that fight. And whether or not we see Twintanya again, I hope to see stricter, more intense DPS checks in the future, things along those lines, things closer to the design of that last phase instead of things like Twister.
I mean... sorry, did you have something to say?
I was going to say hard mode. Is this going to be twisters from 100% to 0?
Oh my... Alright, well, one thing to remember, and I don't think a lot of people realize that this happened, is you guys hit an enrage at the last 1 to 2% of the fight. And I can only imagine how heavy your hearts were. Beater, the last... You guys had literally had less than a second left before Ethereal Profusion killed you guys again. Clearly you guys knew she had an enrage before this very attempt, and so... Were your reactions to an enraged as what the fuck is mine were?
We kind of expected there to be a rate and enrage, but yeah, we got to the enrage a couple of times, so we knew it was coming, and it was very, very close at the end there.
If you can't tell by the screaming in the end of the video, that pretty much portrays their exact feelings at that moment for the enrage.
It almost sounded like you didn't know if you were going to beat it. At the end of the video. It's just because, just kill it, please. Just kill.
Yeah.
Like, just begging for Ethereal Profusion to take just a little bit longer to cast. I mean, I don't know. I guess after the number of hours poured into the first 70% of the fight, I think the notion of an enrage even just would slip the mind. I mean, you spend so much time in the first part, you kind of forget that the whole fight takes about 12 or 13 minutes. It's a long fight by most standards.
It makes learning really, really slow.
Yeah.
I mean, quickly, if you don't want to spoil anything, and without spoiling anything, please, if you could rate the final cutscene after the fight on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give it?
I skipped it.
Anybody here who watched it? Anybody? Oh, man.
I'm pretty sure most everybody in the group skipped it. I think maybe one or two people watched it.
A free company inside joke with cutscenes and skipping them, so... It's just kind of, you'd have to be there to get it type of thing.
Alright, I guess I still have... Now I'm even though you could have rated it a 10, I wouldn't have been as excited for it as I was with you saying you skipped it. Oh, man. I mean, well, the bottom line is the fight's done complete finally. So last question about Turn 5. And I want you guys to have fun with this one. If you could add one mechanic to Turn 5, what would it be? And you're not allowed to say twisters in all phases. No. Just no. Something else.
Why would we want more stuff in that fight?
For a hard mode.
For a hard mode, it's tough to say because they throw so much at us, but I would like to see something that encourages players to try to to burn through the fight faster, more efficiently, rather than delay and pause. So anything along those lines would be great. And I think definitely having the near links do something more, because we spent a lot of time like exploring some kind of we tried everything with those near links because we just had no idea what they were for until we got to the last phases, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I could think of is potentially the side of the arena closing in on you. It's the only thing I could really think of.
Soft and Rage, yeah.
Yeah, Soft and Rage in the last phase, just slowly losing room to Liquid Hells and the Neural Links and everything. It's the only thing I could even really think of for that fight, because the fight is intense, trust me.
That would make the end even more blood-clenchingly difficult, yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for turn 5. I mean, we're not going to go into the specifics of, Twister in the last phase. Still want people to at least explore it a little bit. So before we go, let's look to the future. So patch 2.1 is really not too far away at this point, and I'm sure you guys are already dreaming up some of the fights. I know I am. I've been making videos about it. So endgame roundup. We got treasure hunts, dailies, PvP, Crystal Tower, at least the first couple of floors, extreme mode primals, Good King Mogomog, Pharaoh Sirius, 2 hard mode dungeons, and a mystery hard mode boss. Sounds like a lot on the surface, but do you even think these fights fit anywhere with the current content? Do you think they're going to be harder, easier? What do you think?
I think the timing is really awkward because of how things have played out with Crystal Tower getting pushed back to 2.1. I feel like most of the content is going to fill gaps that by this point in time or by the point in time 2.1 comes out, they're going to fill content gaps that might not necessarily need to be filled. But at the same time, it is going to be nice to have alternate routes to gear that don't involve praying that you don't get another Allegan Ring of Casting, because we have 9 of them or 10 of them.
Oh man, I'll honestly trade those for some Bard boots, man. Turn 4 is just not kind to me at all. So we've spoken about the Good King Mogomog and the Extreme Mode Primal, so let's quickly discuss the new dungeons. I mean, where do we think Pharaoh Sirius fits in at all? And the 2 new hard mode dungeons, just more AK level content to I guess stop those queues altogether, or what do you think?
It's probably just going to be more myth, more ways to get myth, more ways to get Philo. We can hope that they throw in, eye level 80 plus 90 into some of these things, especially the hard modes, but it's really all up in the air at the moment. We really have no idea what they're going to be doing.
I mean, some of it has to be catered to the casual group and, the group that can't raid Twintania all the time. And that's expected with every patch and in every game. There's some stuff that might be thrown in that, these dungeons that just won't interest us because it'll just be, just too casual or whatever you want to call it.
Well, now the Crystal Tower is going to be 24-man content, which is a step up. We haven't seen anything like that in Final Fantasy XIV before. Dare I say a 24-man Twister mechanic?
Yes, please. Safety dance, please.
Safety. Oh, listen, I would take a Twister mechanic over having to deal with people falling behind on that. But realistically, how do you expect this part of the rating tier to go? As you said, it sort of fills in this current rating tier, at least in the way that they've described it in the past before. It's always said that Coil will be the ultimate challenge until, patch 3.0 comes around. So what do you think that means for people who beat Coils 1 through 5, and are they going to be able to quickly go through and defeat the Crystal Tower because it's quote-unquote easier? Or do you think that the whole 24-man thing is going to open up a world of pain for some people?
With all the different things they've said about Crystal Tower, it's really tough to know what to expect. But they've definitely said straight up several times that it's going to be easier, that they want people to enjoy it through Duty Finder. And those types of answers to questions lead us to believe that it's going to be pretty easy. So we hope, when it comes down to it, we're optimists about this game. We played hoping that it'll always be better, and we hope that it'll be harder than we expect, but we're honestly not expecting it to be that tough. So hopefully they surprise us.
Dealing with 24 people was probably going to be harder than the actual encounters, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I know what scares me the most is, just as you said, it's going to be in the Duty Finder. I mean, some people right now are currently scared to use the Duty Finder to find 7 random people. Hell, even finding 3 random people is scary for some people. But 16 to 23 random other people? Like, do you even think that's going to work in the long run?
it may be fun to go into Duty Finder by yourself and queue up for Crystal Tower, and just have like a nice bottle of whiskey next to you and completely just drink yourself silly. But
So,
I mean,
not looking forward to it.
yeah, for like companies like us though, and like other companies who have a pretty sizable roster, I think it's going to be a pretty good experience, even if it is face-rollingly easy.
I mean, other than that, we really just have one final thing. One thing he's been trying to keep under wraps, but I think we all have theories about, and this is this secret hard mode boss that he keeps talking about. Just a harder version of of a boss that's already in the game. So now, anyone listening to this right now, you don't want to know anything that involves the end of the main story arc to level 50. I'd close your ears now, but I have to ask, who do you think's getting the revamp?
Bubbly Bernie, 100%.
100%. All right, that's one for Bubbly Bernie. Can we get two?
I would hope to see Legatus make a comeback in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not exactly that character.
I would hope to see a hard mode Ultima. I don't think they're going to let Ultima be such a pushover with the lore that he has in the Final Fantasy world. I just and plus there's so many mechanics in that fight that would be fun in a hard mode with all the lasers and whatnot. That could be a really fun fight.
It's going to be a hard mode Demon Wall, and everyone's going to die.
Demon Wall. All right, so one for Bubbly Bernie, one for Demon Wall, one for Ultima, and one for the Legatus. My opinion, even though I don't think it'll happen yet, I think we need a fight against all four of the generals in some way, shape, or form. Something very similar to the Final Fantasy XII International version of the Judge fight. If any of you ever played that game, it's an excellent fight, and I think they could do a lot having to deal with Gaius. I don't even remember all their names because I don't care about any of them other than Gaius. But I think there's a lot coming. So, last thing, quick. Anyone excited for PvP or dailies at all? Treasure hunts? Anything?
I'm excited for how bad PvP is going to be with this engine. I'm super excited for that. I really am.
I love dailies in WoW, and I'm gonna love doing them again. But yeah, I'm not very excited for PvP. Honestly.
What about treasure hunts? We don't really know too much about these other than, well, they're treasure hunts. And we've recently begun to find out that there are going to be some that aren't solo. Do you think these are going to provide any sort of challenge for real groups?
I doubt it. I think it'll just be another fun thing to do when it's 2 a.m. and you don't want to gather because gathering makes you want to kill yourself.
Oh, but come on, luminaries! You gotta have the weapons that aren't as cool as they were in 1.0. You gotta have. All right, well, I think that about does it for our talk here. I want to thank you guys again for taking the time to sit down and chat about everything. Is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
I would like to say really quickly, thank you for having us, first off, and thank you to the community for supporting us all along the way. And we hope that you enjoyed watching us progress through the Binding Coil, and we look forward to keeping up the dialogue throughout the rest of this game's lifetime.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again. I'm looking forward to the end game race again, if there's even going to be one come patch 2.1. So hopefully I'll be hearing more from you guys when that time comes around. And just thanks again. Everyone watching, thank you for watching this. There's a transcript in the description below if you would like to read it or refer back to it. Also, please be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share on YouTube for more content coming up, more cool things like this. And also be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter where you can get updates about videos like this and informational guides and things like that. So one last thank you, guys. Thank you from me. Thank you from the community. And until next time, guys, take care.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.